Ever wonder what it really takes to build a business and a life that feels like yours? Welcome to That Big CEO Energy. I'm Callie, entrepreneur, operations whiz, and your go-to for the real, raw, and unfiltered side of business and life. Hey, welcome back to the show. And before we dive into today's episode, I need you to realize something. We are almost halfway through the year. Halfway. Which honestly feels impossible because I swear it was January like 5 business days ago. But here we are. And this time of year is pretty interesting because usually that's when one of two things happens. Either you're gaining momentum and feeling super aligned, or you're starting to realize the year that you imagined in January and the life that you're actually living are not exactly matching up the way you thought they would. And if you're feeling a little off lately, maybe a little stretched, a little reactive, a little exhausted, I need you to hear me when I say this. It may not be a motivation problem. Okay? It may not be a motivation problem. It actually possibly is your calendar. Because our calendars literally tell the truth, don't they? They like to show us all the things. And your calendar tells the truth over your intentions, over your goals. It's not the aesthetic morning routine, right, that you swear you were going to stick to in January, your actual calendar. And today, I want to walk you through something that I think every business owner, every leader, every overwhelmed woman should really do in the middle of the year. And it's this mid-year calendar audit. And it's not to shame yourself. It's not to like give us this spiral into, oh my gosh, I haven't done absolutely nothing, or oh my gosh, I've done literally everything and now I have to come up with more things. Some people are like that. And it's not to realize that you're like super behind, but really to get honest about the life that you're actively building right now. Because if you wait until December to evaluate what's not working, you lose 6 more months. And I think the problem isn't always what we think it is. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is assuming that burnout means that they need a vacation, right? Like, oh my gosh, like this has just been a super stressful year. So I need to just like go somewhere, retreat somewhere, leave all my worries here. And then what happens? When you come back, you guys, that stuff is still here. So now listen, like I'm not saying that you don't need rest ever. Sometimes you absolutely do need rest. But sometimes this burnout that we're feeling, it's information. It's literally your life trying to get your attention. It's waving this white flag. And what's tricky is that we usually try to fix burnout at the symptom level. We need a weekend away. We need a self-care day. We need a break. But if your schedule itself is the problem, you're just temporarily recovering so that you can go back into the same cycle again. And I think that is where people stay stuck for years, and it becomes this like pendulum that we swing on ourselves because they keep trying to manage exhaustion instead of evaluating the actual structure that's creating it. And that's why I love calendar audits so much, because our calendars literally don't lie. It actually shows us the pattern, and our patterns tell us the stories of what we're doing and what we're consuming. And the version of you your calendar is creating oftentimes is not just organizing your life. I want you to think about this for a second. Your calendar is not just organizing your life, right? It's actually shaping you. the way that you spend your time repeatedly becomes your reality. And so if your calendar is full of reacting, rushing to the next thing, squeezing things in, putting yourself last, overcommitting things, saying yes literally to everything, and all you see is blocks of color, eventually that becomes your identity. It becomes who you are. It becomes what people expect of you. You become someone that feels behind all the time, someone who is constantly trying to recover, someone who never feels fully present because your nervous system never gets a chance to breathe. And the hard part, most people don't know that it's actually happening in real time. Because it's like this slow progression, right? That builds. It's like one commitment at a time. One thing just keeps adding on, just keeps piling on. And what happens is when those things start to stack, and people around us, like my husband, for instance, as kind, as gracious as he is, he's like, I think you're taking on too much. And I got offended by that. And when the offense came, I was like, absolutely not. And he just kept saying, like, I miss my life. I just think that you're taking on too much. But raise your hand, right? If you're also that person. I'm like, no, but I can take it on. But I also always felt behind. I felt like I never could catch my breath. Because it like built slowly over time. It was one commitment that just kept, you just keep adding. And one like, sure, I can do that. No problem. One more thing just kept getting squeezed into the week, right? And suddenly I looked up and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have built a life that I barely can keep up with. And this is why I think I decided to take this whole entire first half of the year. Like, as many of you know, I had bariatric surgery in November, so that slowed life down a lot. But I also made an intentional decision that I was going to strip away anything that didn't bring me joy. And honestly, like mid-year is kind of the best year for me to look back and evaluate, like, how has this been going since January, right? Because I took on a new position. I have sort of restructured my business and restructured like what I want to do with my business. And in January, I had goals. But as I am moving into June, it'll be like the end of May when we're talking about this, so June, I have data, right? I actually have data on what I can look at for the past 6 months and ask myself, what's working? Well, what's working for me is I have way more white space on my calendar. I get up earlier in the morning so that I can work on my business, and I have very structured time throughout my day. So that's really working. I have moved into more of a reader, way more than I've ever been before in my life, which is working for my brain because it allows me to be more creative. And what's working is I have boundaries that are put in place for the things that I want to do, and I have to be way more organized because I have limited time to do other things outside of the job that I am working, in addition to running my business. And so it really is working because I'm prioritizing the people, the places, the things that I am doing. And then I also look at like what's draining me. Where do I feel like I am just in front of a fire hose and I am getting suffocated? And I think some of those things have done really well at falling off of my calendar because I've had to force them to do that. But it's also me being super intentional about who even like I'm having coffee with or who I'm spending my time with. Because I can't keep putting myself in positions where I'm around people also that drain me. And so then I had to ask, what keeps getting pushed? And there are some things that I just keep like kicking the can down the road. And ultimately I just decided like, I'm just going to throw the can away instead of continuing to kick it down the road. One, because I wasn't passionate about it. Two, because it really didn't, it was just kind of one of those things that what was I doing it for, right? And then the other things that I have looked over these past couple weeks is what keeps taking over my schedule. What are the things that I just keep saying yes to because I had them an obligation before, and then when my life adjusted, when I started wanting other things, they had out of obligation continue to be on my schedule, and so it just sort of like started taking over my schedule. And so I, again, instead of kicking the can down the road, like just throw the can away, just throw it away. Two other things that I looked at: what gives me energy, and moving my body gives me energy, and fueling it really well gives me energy. So those are two things that I have prioritized over the past 6 months, which has been amazing. And then the other thing that I looked at is what consistently exhausts me. And honestly, my phone. My phone consistently exhausts me. Like every time I pick it up, I just want to put it back down. Unless it's talking to the kids or my husband or someone that I am really close to, right? But I don't find myself excessively scrolling anymore, which is helpful. And when I do, I notice that that's because I am lacking something else. So I feel like I'm not prioritizing myself in some other area. And I'm using that as a gateway to just tune out, right? So being in tune with sort of who I am, what my behaviors are, have been helpful. And so that's kind of the guide that I want you all to think about too, is when you actually look at your life and you look at your calendar for the past 6 months. What's working? What is draining? What keeps taking over your schedule? What keeps getting pushed? Where are you kicking the can down the road when that can just needs to be thrown away? What's giving you energy? And then what consistently exhausts you? And I think this matters because people love setting goals. And there's nothing wrong with setting goals, but I think we often rarely evaluate the systems and the rhythms that are supporting the goals that we're trying to achieve. And we can't create a different year when we're running on the same patterns. You literally can't, because as I've talked about in previous episodes, our brain comes back to comfort, right? Our brain consistently comes back to where does it feel good? Where is it being nurtured? When it starts to dip into the unknown or changing up in patterns, it gets triggered by those things. And when it gets triggered, it often sends this fight or flight response and produces fear, and then we back off because our brain literally cannot take the change that is about to happen. And so when we don't spend time creating different patterns to create different results, we end up recognizing that the systems and the rhythms that are supporting the goals, they're rarely getting evaluated because of the fear that's in place that might raise a red flag that says, like, the systems and the rhythms that you currently have in place will never help you reach your goals. You have to be doing something different in order to yield XYZ, which I think is why sometimes when we're writing out our goals, it's like the same thing every year, right? I'm just going to use a very basic example, which is reading books. Oh, this year I'm going to read 24 more books. It's a very good goal. Don't get me wrong. Reading is important, but there's nothing in there that's really a challenge, right? Like, for someone to read 2 books a month, that's not really a challenge. Anyone can do that. And so it's this easy marker of check, yep, in 2026, 2027, I can read 24 books. I know I can. So when I meet that, it's already, my brain has understood that that's comfort. That is not something that it has to exercise any other extra sort of muscle to achieve. And so the system and the rhythm that is supporting that goal, it doesn't really have to change much, right? Maybe you have to read 10 extra pages a day. Great. I'll do that on the bus, on my commute to work. I'll do it in the Uber, like whatever. I'll turn it on in an audiobook. No big deal. But if you were to say, I am going to read one book a day, and your calendar is stacked to the hill, and you have nothing but back-to-back meetings, you barely have time for the work that you're actually doing, that is a goal also that you will not achieve. And why won't you achieve it? Because you don't have systems and you don't have rhythms that are in place to support that goal. So your systems and rhythms that you have for your goals also have to support the goals that you're trying to achieve. Because if you don't have those things figured out, it's not just, how do I want to say this? It's not just, I am going to write down this goal and I'm going to make sure that it happens. How are you going to make it happen? Well, I have to do X, Y, and Z, right? So we write down X, Y, and Z and we're like, yes, of course, that's achievable. So then we start to try to make that thing fit inside of what we already have going on. Instead of looking at what we already have going on and saying, what do I need to get rid of so that this thing is being met, not from exhaustion, not from overextending myself, not from lacking energy in other places. I hope I'm trying to convey this and meeting the conveyance of this in a way that makes sense. But again, you cannot create a different year while you're running on the same patterns. You can't. It's literally impossible. And how do we do then this mid-calendar audit? Like some people I hear, they'll say, I can't change my schedule because I have kids that are in sports and I have obligations that need to be met and people need me. I hear that all the time. People need me. Do they though? Do they actually need you, or do they think that they need you because you've already established that that's what you're going to do? Let that sink in. So I want to make this practical because I just don't want it to be like this super inspiring, we get rid of all this stuff on your calendar and have this big white space. I want you to be able to actually do this. So I want you to set aside a few uninterrupted hours. And already people are like, yeah, I don't have time for that. You do, but that also requires you looking at your calendar and seeing what you need to get rid of. So that's your first step, actually. And yes, uninterrupted matters. It's not while you're half answering emails. It's not when you're cooking dinner. It's not when you're multitasking. Actually sit down with your calendar and pull up the last 5 months, right? Like January through now. I want you to start reviewing your life honestly. Every meeting, every trip, every event, every commitment, every recurring obligation, and divide them mentally or physically if you want to journal it. I love me some good paper and pen. But divide it into 3 categories. What's worth it, what's not worth it, and what is life-giving. And I want you to be honest about it. Not productive honest. This is not like, okay, what's going to make me the best version of myself, blah, blah, blah. No, it is like wholehearted, honestly. Do you think it's worth it? Like you yourself as a whole person. And I know as a mom, sometimes with kids, we get wrapped up into being a mom and that becomes our anchor. That becomes who we are. But then we forget we're a whole person. and we have a whole brain and a whole heart that matter. And so if this is your time of hearing this where you are struggling with that, I'm here to say to you, this is the time where you need to figure out your calendar. And trust me, when you tell little Johnny that he is not going to play travel ball in addition to play school ball, he's got to pick one or the other, it's going to be okay. Because your whole identity is not traveling for baseball on the weekend. Honey, I'm just here to tell you, he will still get a scholarship if he's good enough. Yep, we're not playing pro sports, right? So that is the kind of literal honesty that you need to have. Is it worth it? What is not worth it? And what gives you life? And if there is nothing on that calendar that you can say like wholeheartedly, this is for me and me only, sister friend, we have another conversation to be having. But I want you to actually be honest, because some of those things might have actually made you money and they're still not worth the cost of your energy. And some of those things may not have looked productive, but they made you feel like yourself again. And that matters too, because your calendar, right, reveals your real priorities. And this is the part that always just sort of humbles me a little bit, because we all have intentions about who we are. But your calendar shows you who received your time. And time is your life. So when you look back over the last several months, what received most of your life? Was it consistent maintenance? Was it emergencies? Was it everyone else's priorities? Was it building something meaningful? Was it space for joy? Was there space for your health? And was there space for just thinking? Or did your schedule only leave room for reacting to that too? And listen, this is not about perfection, right? Like there are seasons where life is genuinely demanding. Let me tell you, genuinely demanding. But there's a difference between a demanding season and then having it be chronically unsustainable, right? And that's where I really want you to pay attention, is to look at the things that you say matter most: your health, your relationships, your business growth, your peace, your creativity. And then ask your calendar, did it reflect that? Because sometimes, like, we deeply value something, but structurally, we're giving it no room to exist. So if you're feeling the pull to be a runner. So I am getting back into running again after losing, 83 pounds, I think, 84, whatever. And I have to find structure in my calendar for that, because I have to give it room to exist. If I say to myself that is the thing that I deeply value, is moving my body and being out in the world running, then I have to give it room to exist, which means some things on my calendar need to move. And then if we don't do that, if we don't give it room to exist, we often stand around and we wonder why we feel so disconnected from ourselves. You cannot continuously abandon yourself on your calendar and then expect to feel aligned in your life. One of the biggest things I think that I asked myself during this calendar audit is, what actually mattered? That is the craziest question that you could ask yourself. Like, what actually mattered here? And then I think what was crazy about it is I started to justify, right? Like I started to justify the things that were making me busy, not the things that actually created movement. And it's usually this very small percentage of things that make me feel busy that actually were enough to perpetuate me not feeling like I made any movement. right? Like a few conversations, a few strategic decisions, a few habits that I have that just consistently made me look busy, a few projects. And meanwhile, there's like this huge amount of energy in all of those little things that honestly didn't need that much of me as they had received. And this is why being a CEO of your life, being a CEO of a company, this is why you need a calendar audit, is because if you don't intentionally direct your time, everyone else will do it for you. Everything else will claim it for you. I think a lot about people that are scheduling for survival and not leadership, right? Like they're just trying to get through the week. Do you hear me on that? We're just trying to get through the week. Sometimes it is Tuesday and I'm like, this is the longest week ever. I can't. But it is literally because I'm just scheduling for survival. But I think if you want to build something meaningful, your calendar has to create space for vision, for strategy, for recovery, for creativity, which I think is the biggest proponent of being able to then feed into all the other areas of your life. But most importantly, your calendar has to have space for being proactive instead of constantly reactive to what's coming up. And I think this is one of the biggest shifts that I've made in my business, in my life, is moving from being an operator of my life and my business, of just, showing up and doing the thing, to actually being a chief executive officer and strategically mapping out, giving every hour of my day a job. And please hear this clearly. When I say give every minute of my day a job, it does not mean filling it with bright colored blocks like your Google Calendar, unless a huge chunk of that is a bright yellow sunny spot color that says rest or care or Callie time or Shannon time or fill in your name time. It is kind of like when you're budgeting, right? And you give every dollar that you have a job. It doesn't mean that you're spending all of that money. It literally means that you are prioritizing every single moment of the day into a bucket that matters. It matters. And if it doesn't matter, then the can gets thrown away. And it's realizing that productivity is not the goal. Alignment is. So here's the good news. You're not stuck with this first half of the year. You get to adjust. And I know that I have said this multiple times, so I'm also going to say it in here. You are allowed to make mid-course corrections in your life. You get to adjust. You get to reevaluate. You get to say, this isn't working. These meetings aren't necessary. This commitment no longer fits. You get to redesign that. And honestly, that's full-on leadership. That is taking control of your life. That is not blindly, continually something that's draining you because you started it. You don't have to finish it, right? If you're kicking the can down the road, pick it up and throw it away. So here's what I want you to do this week. Audit your calendar. Not to criticize yourself, but to understand yourself. Look at the patterns that are being created. Look at the energy that is leaking. Look at what's actually supporting you and ask yourself, if I keep living exactly like this for the next 6 months, where will it take me? Because the second half of the year is going to be shaped by what you intentionally change right now. Not by motivation, not by wishing, but by awareness. And your calendar is already telling you the truth. You just have to be willing to look at it. I'll see you in the next episode.